Samira, a 28-year-old woman living in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, had what appeared to be a perfect life. She was a devoted wife and mother, married to Faisal, a successful businessman. On the outside, their home seemed to reflect a comfortable and happy life, but internally, Samira felt a deep emotional emptiness. Despite having financial security and a loving family, her marriage to Faisal had begun to lose its warmth. As Faisal's career took him away from home for extended periods, Samira was left to handle everything alone, creating a growing sense of loneliness. This emotional void, though hidden behind a facade of devotion, began to weigh heavily on Samira. Amir, Faisal's father, was a respected man in the family and community. A man in his 60s, still strong and charismatic, Amir noticed the growing distance between Samira and his son. While Faisal was often absent, Amir was present in Samira's life, offering guidance and wisdom. At first, their relationship was purely respectful and formal, but the longer Faisal stayed away, the more Samira began to seek comfort in Amir's attention. He paid close attention to her, listened to her concerns, and made her feel seen in a way that her husband no longer did. Amir, despite his age and authority, also began to feel a deep, forbidden attraction to Samira, which he tried to dismiss. But the connection between them grew stronger. In early 2010, their interactions shifted. Conversations, once innocent and occasional, turned into private, lingering moments. Samira began to find solace in these exchanges, feeling understood and appreciated by Amir. This emotional connection, though inappropriate, began to fill the loneliness that had haunted Samira. Amir, aware of the tension in Samira's marriage, manipulated the situation, reassuring her that their bond was harmless. Yet, as their secret meetings became more frequent, the line between familial affection and something darker blurred. By mid-2011, Samira and Amir were meeting in secret. When Faisal was away, Amir would visit their home, and they would spend hours together, hiding behind closed doors. Despite knowing what they were doing was wrong, Samira could not resist. She would pray for forgiveness, but the temptation always returned, stronger than before. The affair became a dangerous game of lies and deception. Samira's behavior began to change. She became more withdrawn, less engaged with her children, and more distracted when Faisal was around. Faisal, often preoccupied with work, began to notice subtle changes in Samira's behavior. She seemed distant, her once vibrant personality now muted. He attributed it to the stresses of managing their home, but a nagging suspicion began to grow in his mind. He noticed that she was avoiding physical contact. Her laughter seemed forced, and she no longer eagerly awaited his return. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. By late 2011, whispers started to circulate in the family. Faisal's younger sister, Aisha, noticed the strange glances exchanged between Samira and Amir. She pointed it out to Faisal, but he dismissed her concerns, not willing to believe that anything inappropriate was happening. However, the seed of doubt had been planted. In the following months, Faisal began to observe his wife more closely. He noticed how she would disappear with Amir at family gatherings, and how they seemed to share private, intimate moments. By 2012, the affair had grown bolder. Samira and Amir became more reckless, meeting in secluded locations like parks and the outskirts of their family estate. Samira struggled to keep up the appearance of a loving wife and mother while leading a double life. Her guilt deepened, but so did her emotional dependence on Amir. The tension in her marriage with Faisal reached a breaking point. Faisal, now fully alert to the changes in Samira, started to closely monitor her every move. He noticed how she would guard her phone more carefully, how her behavior grew more secretive, and how her conversations with him became terse and cold. Though he suspected something was wrong, he hesitated to confront her. He needed proof. Finally, in February 2014, Fizzle's suspicions were confirmed. One evening, while Samira was out, he went through her phone and found the damning evidence: text messages exchanged between Samira and Amir confirming the affair. The shock and devastation hit him hard. The anger he had been suppressing for so long now boiled to the surface, but instead of confronting them immediately, Fizzle chose to wait, plotting his confrontation with both Samira and Amir. On the evening of March 6, 2014, Fizzle returned home early from a business trip. The house was eerily quiet. The children were away at his sister's house, but something felt off. As Fizzle sat down, he heard muffled voices coming from the guest room, voices that were unmistakably Samira's and Amir's. His heart began to race as he realized that his worst fears were about to be confirmed. He quietly approached the guest room, his breath catching in his throat as he saw his wife and father locked in an intimate embrace. Rage surged through him. In an uncontrollable fit of anger, Fizzle burst into the room and confronted them. Samira tried to explain, but the words were lost in the storm of Fizzle's fury. Blinded by betrayal and humiliation, Fizzle grabbed a decorative knife from the wall, a symbol of family heritage now turned into a weapon. In a blind rage, he lunged at Amir, stabbing him repeatedly. The violence was swift and brutal, driven by the years of emotional pain and betrayal that had festered inside him. Amir collapsed to the ground, blood pooling around him. Samira, frozen in shock, could only watch as the tragedy unfolded. The sound of Samira's scream echoed through the house, but Fizzle barely heard it. His mind was consumed by the enormity of what he had done. He collapsed to the floor, exhausted from the violence, and the knife slipped from his hand. When the police arrived, they found Fizzle covered in his father's blood, and Amir's lifeless body lay on the floor. Samira, still in shock, sat motionless in the corner of the room. Fizzle was arrested and taken into custody. The news of the murder spread quickly, and the once respected businessman became the subject of scandal. The affair, the violence, and the tragic loss of Amir shattered the family's reputation in the community. As the investigation unfolded, Samira's role in the affair became public knowledge. She was questioned by the authorities, and her actions were laid bare for everyone to see. Though Fizzle was the one who committed the murder, the court saw Samira's betrayal as the root cause of the tragedy. The details of the affair shocked the community, and the once admired family was now in ruins. Fizzle, though guilty of murder, was granted some leniency due to the emotional torment he had endured. His sentence was reduced to 15 years in prison. Samira, on the other hand, was initially sentenced to death for her part in the affair. However, Fizzle, despite his anger and pain, pleaded for mercy on her behalf, and her sentence was reduced to 10 years in prison. Though Fizzle's sentence was less severe, the emotional toll of the events would haunt him forever. He would live the rest of his life with the consequences of his actions. Samira, now imprisoned and stripped of her reputation, would face her own battles with guilt and isolation. Their marriage, once built on tradition and respect, was now destroyed beyond repair. As the years went on, Samira reflected on the choices that led to the downfall of her family. The weight of her guilt and the isolation she now faced were constant reminders of the tragic consequence of betrayal. The once promising future for her and her children had been irreparably altered, and the family's legacy, once a pillar of the community, was now shattered. The constant reflections of Samira and the consequences of the choices made, particularly her emotional weakness and yearning for love, served as a grim reminder of how fragile relationships can be when trust is broken. She often wondered what might have happened if she had sought help or confided in Fissel about her struggles, rather than turning to his father. The spiral of emotional isolation, guilt, and longing for connection had ultimately cost her everything. In the depths of her prison cell, she thought of her children, wondering how they would grow up without the stability of a united family. She regretted not prioritizing them over her own emotional needs. As time passed, she came to understand the full weight of her actions, and it became clear to her that no amount of forgiveness could erase the irreversible damage she had caused. Fissel, too, would never escape the consequences of that night. The image of his father's lifeless body would haunt him for the rest of his life. His sorrow over the loss of his family and the murder of his father turned into a deep sense of regret as he grappled with his own anger and the violent act that had resulted in such destruction. Both Samira and Fissel were left to reckon with the consequences of their choices, which had ultimately led to the shattering of everything they once held dear. This tragic story serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the destructive power of betrayal, unchecked emotions, and the irreversible consequences of actions taken in moments of weakness. What started as a simple emotional connection between Samira and Amir spiraled into a horrific tragedy that tore apart an entire family. Samira's reflection on her choices, Fissel's emotional turmoil, and the loss of Amir's life and influence within the family would forever haunt those involved, leaving a legacy of pain, regret, and brokenness.